All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another night here riding with the road crew on the Roads to Liberty podcast. We got the OG crew here tonight, myself, Mike Kniebel, and Ben Backus. And this evening, we're going to be taking a little journey on journalism, modern journalism, and whether or not it's in the death knells here with modern democracy, how we've gotten here, and offer a little bit of insight on how modern journalism might be saved. And Ben, I got to say, as a one semester journalism major at the University of Nebraska, I think I'm well versed and very well educated on this topic with my two classes that I took. So I'm excited to get into it.
You could at least write fake news, I'm sure.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, it was. The classes were well worth the cost per credit hour that I was paying there. So, well, Ben, this was kind of like your idea. What got you thinking about this?
Well, I'd like to say I came up with it on my own, but I went to a public town hall forum type thing they held here, and I guess they held them across the state. They were put on by NET, and I think UNL was in on it. It was called Journalism and Democracy, and I attended, and it was pretty well attended for Western Nebraska on I think it was like a Wednesday evening or something, and they had there's three respected journalists, I guess. Boy, I wish I could remember which ones they were. One of them was really well known. One was a younger gal out of Denver. There was somebody out of Iowa who was just retiring. And the third one was from Nebraska. Dang, it bugs me, his name's escaping me. But if you heard it, you know who he was. He's a radio guy. He's got one of those voices for radio. But, they took interaction from the audience, and they just kind of had a discussion about where journalism is going and its role on democracy.
Were they taking any type of particular slant on this? Was it because to me, my initial thought would be like this was going to be primarily a more liberal leaning, or was it pretty well balanced?
Well, they actually did a good job of remaining unbiased. The crowd, I mean, you're obviously in Trump territory, so there was the fake news group was out there asking questions, and some of their questions are valid too in regards to how the media treats Trump. But it's still bugging me who that guy was. And, it got me thinking, what do I use for news? What do you use for news, Mike?
So this is kind of a tough question. I mean, so here's what I'll do is I'll occasionally check the CNN website just to see what they're putting up there. Just to kind of get a general idea of what, some of the mainstream places are throwing out. But I mean, as far as getting actual information, it's not CNN. I get a lot of my stuff from, honestly, the podcasts now. Like, I'll watch when Joe Rogan's got something on. I'll watch Libertarian, or I'll listen to Libertarian Institute with Scott Horton. I like Glenn Beck. I like Dave Smith.
I was listening to Beck. Is he making a comeback? I don't know. It seemed like for a while he was just some Republican lapdog, and then he kind of got away from that. And
he did. He kind of got away from it actually with George Bush. After a couple of years after the war, he just kind of realized that, we had been lied to about the war. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of started to change their tune a little bit. I noticed that with the 2016 election, Beck had, Austin Peterson. He gave the libertarians a good voice, and his recent merger with CRTV has actually given a few more libertarians a voice there. So I'd say he's a very good source of information, even on those times when I disagree with him. But as far as like actual websites, man, I'll just check local news. And then if I need to go international, I'll probably try and go BBC, Zero Hedge, Reuters, just to see what's floating out there. But I can't honestly get anything from CNN, Fox,
Mhm.
definitely not MSN. I mean, it's just they're all kind of crap shows in their own way.
What is CRTV? I guess I was listening to Beck a little bit, and then he went all in for Ted Cruz. Do you remember that? And I was like, I'm done with this guy. What's this merger about?
So the merger was about bringing in, I think it was like Mark Levin and I don't
Is
know.
Shapiro in that group?
No. Shapiro is one of the only ones that is not in the group. I don't have a full list in front of me here, but he did have a few of the other people on his podcast today. But it was just about making a stronger network or stronger entertainment venue, I guess, for a lot of the voices. It was kind of done in defense because they were worried about individuals getting deplatformed like they have been from
Sure.
Apple and the other sites here over the last couple of years.
So what do you prefer on your local news? Do you like the paper? Do you like television, radio?
Well, I'm going to say, as far as local is concerned, the paper, the World Herald, is just a
Worst
rag.
Herald?
It's it's a horrible rag. So I don't like that at all. And they've shown us no love over the years. So quite honestly, I have no love for them. But you've got a couple of TV networks here that are pretty good, like our NBC station and the ABC station here out of Omaha are both really involved. They've given not only the Libertarian Party a fair shake, but I think they give really just a fair side to the local news stories here. So I like them, and I think that's one of those things that you'll find probably across the country is that you just you trust your local stations a hell of a lot more than your national ones. What about you, Ben? I know you've got a station out there that's essentially shares my last name, so I kind of like them to begin with.
KNEB, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm partial to radio or TV because in a newspaper they'll type, the story will say so and so said this. I mean, how do you know? I mean, you're going off that the reporter said they said that. And I've been misquoted before. It's like, oh, I didn't even say that. And I've talked to other people who've been misquoted by newspapers, but on the radio, you can't really be misquoted when they're playing what you said. And the same thing with TV. They can edit it, but those same words are still coming out of your mouth. We're on a newspaper story. That could not be the case. And our newspaper out here is the Star Herald, who's owned by the same conglomerate as the World Herald. So it kind of gives you an idea to the quality of what they do.
Sure. Well, and I want to say one thing though about the World Herald is that while I think the management of the paper leaves a lot to be desired, I have had some very good experiences with a particular reporter there, Aaron Sandiford, who's been, pretty straightforward with me about about some articles, and I've contacted him a few times when we've been left out of the initial article, and he's gone back and edited a couple of comments with adding something from me or something from Laura in there to make sure that all viewpoints are encompassed. But I have gotten it from him that it's kind of the World Herald's policy to, for the most part, ignore any type of third party because of their ridiculous standards. But he's been I think a shining star amongst that sea of crap that is the World Herald.
Yeah, and I guess at national, I don't really even go to any regular sites for net. I go to like Reddit and the politics posts in there, and I do a lot of my reading on my phone. So Google News will bring up a story, and then it's got like the Starship Troopers sort of thing. Would you like to know more? And it'll post you 5 or 6 other articles on the same story. So you can figure, if you want to figure out if anybody's spouting BS, that's really helpful. But national, I don't pay any attention to CNN or Fox News or any of those.
So Andy commented about C-SPAN. I mean, I think, C-SPAN.
C-SPAN. I mean, it's just dry footage. I guess it's hard to.
It's hard to add a slant when you're just setting up a camera and just letting it run. But I guess I do like CNBC too. a little bit, being a financial guy, watching Larry Kudrow and some of those others on CNBC. That was you're going to get a bit of a different viewpoint on there because they're all market driven. But yeah, other than that, you're right. There's just not a lot. But how did we get here though? I mean, I'm always told about this golden age of media, and when I was in my 2 journalism classes, they talked about the respectableness of the newscaster, and they would always bring up, Walter Cronkite, and you always talk about this bygone age of newscasting. Where did that go, and when did we start our downward slide, Ben?
Well, I've wondered that too. Everybody's pretty aware to keep using Trump's dumb term, to fake news. And it's obvious that stuff is fake news. And then I started wondering, well, when in the heck did the media start lying to us just outright? And when did we even start to notice? Because I didn't have any, I kind of knew about media bias, but the outright fake crap is probably for me only been in the last decade. I don't know about for you.
Actually, I
just that you notice. I'm not saying that's
just that I noticed. Yeah.
When did you?
I mean, it's been a whole new era this last decade. It's very noticeable, but I would say that you kind of start to see the inklings of it looking back. I would say around the O.J. Simpson trial. To be honest, I mean I think that's when
you started to notice.
Well, looking back on it, I mean, not at the time because I was 13, but
right.
If you want to take a timeline back to when the media really kind of started to jump the shark, it was with that, cutting into a car chase, and then what seemed to be about a 2-year long trial and investigation. I don't know. It's probably year and a half.
That's probably the best example of how a news story will drive their ratings and what they'll cover. You know what I mean? Because covering something boring, even though it's important, C-SPAN doesn't get ratings. And, you get into the deal of why Trump is so popular, or, if they need ratings to stay on the air. So of course they're going to want to fabricate a story that is going to generate a lot of ratings, or cover something that'll generate a lot of ratings, even though it's of little importance. And one of the guys that's part of the reason when he talked about why he was getting out of journalism is with the new media on their website, when they would put stories up, it would tell them which stories got the most hits. So then they started telling him, we need you to cover more of this stuff. And it might've been dumb crap like dogs slipping on the ice. He gave an example of that, a story about pets slipping on the ice, and it was a huge hit, and they wanted more pet stories. And he was like, yeah, I'm probably done being in journalism at this point.
So it's kind of like that whole Anchorman thing where he's talking about the squirrels water skiing. It's just that's what's going to
get a lot of hits. If you had squirrels water skiing on your news site, and that's what they got to do, I guess, to stay in business. But how'd they stay in the business before they did that, I wonder? Or were people just more willing to buy boring news and watch it? I don't know.
Well, I think I think it was probably with the increase of the networks and the increase of the markets that you're able to get the news from. I mean, people had to differentiate themselves to try and keep that audience. So yeah, that's where the commentary came into play there. It's that's how you were going to differentiate yourself. No longer was there just these few supposedly trusted news sources. You had to say, well, this is how I'm putting my spin on it. So if you want to get that information, definitely come over here for it.
Yeah. And back to your original question about losing the trust. I think when it really started to get shady was probably around Vietnam and reporting on the war. I remember seeing a story about they were going to talk about they were covering Congress. NBC or ABC was covering Congress, and they were going to start talking about how many deaths were in Vietnam that week or how much it was costing. and LBJ gets on the phone to NBC and says, "You guys can't put this on the air; it'll be a disaster." So they cut to right in the middle of their talking about what's going on. They cut to like an episode of Gilligan's Island for no reason.
Mm.
And that shows to me the first blatant incidents of the media being in the modern age. It goes back, the old newspaper barons, a lot of towns used to have two newspapers. Well,
Yeah.
One was the Republican newspaper, right? And the other one was a Democrat newspaper. And that's the way it used to be. Now most places, there's only one major paper.
Well, yeah. I mean, even growing up, the major papers around here also had like the morning and then the afternoon edition. So you were able to get, updates throughout the day that way. But yeah, it's just, Jared asks, is this a trusted news source? Probably not. We try to be, I guess. Thanks, Jared. Another question he has is thoughts on the Smith-Mundt Act.
That's propaganda, isn't it?
And the 2013 NDAA. Yeah, that is. I'll if you want to pull that up, or I can pull that up, and we can actually read from that for the people that might be listening.
Well, the Smith-Mundt Act is just where the government's not supposed to sponsor propaganda. But I thought that was just a wink and a nod sort of thing, because they've always kind of done it, as far as I know. We'll try and address that here a little bit. Maybe Jared could comment on it. But yeah, that's but where do they draw the line? I know the government drops propaganda in other countries. So how do you know with the internet? How do you know it's not leaking all over the place? And isn't that kind of Smith-Mundt Act might even be kind of out of date anymore, because anything could be government propaganda with the internet now.
Well, and that's where, you kind of get into almost like a conspiracy theory type realm, because if anything can be propaganda, then how do you know what's going to be real information out there and what's misinformation with, the prevalence of all this stuff on the internet? You got Facebook and all these companies saying that they want to do away with fake news stories, but
and even there's ways around it. I mean, even like at a local level, we're not supposed to be for or against any ballot initiatives as an elected official, but they start a committee to support something, or that's how they get around it. I'm sure it's the same way the government is if you got PACs, you can indirectly influence that way. So I think the Smith-Mundt Act is probably just out of place anymore.
Oh yeah, talking about Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia network.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking of. It isn't propaganda when our government does it, says Andy Shambaugh. It's just helpful information that you might want to know.
They're just being benevolent. That's all.
So yeah, back to, I guess the media has always been biased since there's been newspapers. Like I mentioned, the two newspapers. But between there and probably the 1950s, 60s, it seemed like media had a pretty good run, didn't it? Or were people just not as aware of it?
Well, so I mean, when you're going into the 50s, so I mean, you're looking at us, rebuilding and just, well, that's the wrong term. You're looking at us, coming out of World War II, and everything that we kind of built up after that, and we're the biggest kid on the block now. So, we're going into this great area here, and so the 50s, you see a lot of talk about the Red Scare. And, that's when we're going into the Cold War. And then you start seeing stuff with when, Eisenhower's president. So, I mean, there was a lot of stuff for that decade that centered around, the spread of communism, the Korean War. And yeah, I think Jared's asking, is media currently biased by nature? Because
we talked about that. Yeah.
I think it's almost naturally biased, but the propaganda, I think in the 50s, we've kind of almost idolized it in a way, because we're thinking, okay, this was just such a good time. Our country was thriving, and despite the fact that there was this Cold War and there was this Red Scare and across the country and Hollywood, and I think.
Well, it seems to me that those reporters just reported. It seems like when you see those old newscasts, they're just giving the story. They're just telling what happened as opposed to putting any sort of lean on it.
But even whatever lean they were putting on it was just this very pro-American lean, though, so that every newscast that you look at back then, for the most part, had a very pro-American, pro-family lean to it. And I mean, that's so, yeah, you were getting a biased news source.
So you're saying it was biased, but maybe the culture was so homogenized that the people that were against the bias probably were a pretty small voice. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense at that time, yeah, because you're almost scared to be a different voice. If you were going to speak out and say this isn't right, well, then that's all of a sudden when you start getting accused of being a communist.
Have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Well, and another issue I want to touch on too is, news gets a lot of their stories from academia and all the fake academic papers out there anymore. Have you looked into that at all?
I did. This was covered not too long ago, I think, in another article, maybe by Reason, where they were talking about these fake academic articles that were published about. One was about dog rape, rape amongst dogs, not raping dogs, but
yeah. The gist of it was if male assertive dogs were more likely to try and rape other dogs in a dog park. And they came up with all these stats and it pushed a feminist bias. So it was automatically gobbled up.
Well, then there was the other one that was published, and this was James Lindsay and Peter, I'm going to say his last name wrong, but Boghossian.
Yeah, it's like, I don't, Boghossian, maybe something. Yeah.
One of those letters might be silent, but there was another one where they published a fake feminist article, but they essentially replaced just the word, anything related to Jews from Mein Kampf, and did they just replace it with white men, or was it just men?
No, they replaced it with white men, and they have direct excerpts. It's right out of Mein Kampf. They just took out Jews and put in white men, and the feminists loved it, and they cited research in it, and it was put out in papers. And that's, if a journalist is going to research a story, of course they're going to use academic papers. So Trust Me, I'm Lying. Is that a book they wrote, Jared? Or
oh no, that's actually a book by Ryan Holiday. I've read it. I'm not. I will say, hold on, Jared. I'm going to pull this up here real quick. Trust Me, I'm Lying. You recommended this book for me not a while back, and I will say that I didn't really like it. I don't know. Maybe Ryan Holiday just kind of came off as a bit too. Gosh, I don't even know what the right word is, but it's basically an inner workings of media manipulation. And, I kind of liked where he was trying to go, but he was just way too cocky about everything. And it just really kind of turned me off to any message that he had about it. So there were some good things. I don't know. Pick up that book, Ben. Tell me what you think about it. We can discuss it some other time.
All right. I got a tab over here. And you had submitted another one that I hadn't looked at. Was it Jonathan Haidt, The Suppression of Ideas on Campus? What was that about?
Well, actually, no, the book was The Coddling of the American Mind.
Oh, okay.
In talking about the fake articles, the fake feminist articles, a lot of this kind of comes from the current situation on college campuses, as far as what people are accepting and wanting to go towards, and this sort of like safe space there on campus. But The Coddling of the American Mind kind of talks about, because he's a fairly left-leaning professor who got kicked out of his campus, and he's now part of like the dark web of what do they call that? The intellectual dark web.
The intellectual
Like
dark web, yeah, with
with like
Jordan
Jordan.
Peterson, and yeah, he's part of that gang.
He is part of that gang. You'll probably see him on Joe Rogan every so often. He's been on back a few of those others, but he just simply said that, look, when it comes to like the transgender, when it comes to changing some of these pronouns around, he's like, look, some words have meanings, and some things you can't just simply change because you feel like you want to. There are some things that are just hard set. He's like, look, I'm all about being fairly liberal with the rest of my ideas, but he challenged one thing on the current liberal campus situation, and he got ostracized. But he kind of talks about, like, not only out of that's where you're getting all of your new journalism students. That's where you're getting all of your ideas that are being prevalent in the media. And of course, what do they say? Culture is downstream of politics. So it's, all this stuff's kind of feeding into it. But it's another approach. I recommend it. The Coddling of the American Mind. I think it's a very well balanced book as far as what we're seeing in the media nowadays, and also just on college campuses in general.
So tying that into the comment earlier, are college campuses pandering then to get people to go there? Why are they so coddling and pro leftist, do you think? Is that what college students want?
It seems to be what a good portion of them want. And the book gets into that as far as what's led us down that path, and this is primarily what they call the I generation, the people that were born after 1995, who know this world, Ben, that you and I were teenagers when this stuff was starting, and these people were just being born. So it's the individuals that were getting to college just around 2013. It was just a very big change in a lot of things societally, and it was probably the helicopter parenting, defensive parenting. There's a whole bunch of things that go into it, but yeah, that's where the campuses are now. That's it's almost like the yin and the yang there, as far as like the media and the college campuses. They're both, you can't have one without the other, and they're both kind of feeding off each other and going further and further to the left.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I don't understand where they came up with this whole they need to pander, though. Were colleges going under that weren't leftist leaning? Did you hear any stories about that? Or like colleges that stuck to their guns, or everybody's like, oh, well, they're doing it, we must need to do it?
Well, that's something that I'm still reading up on. I'm still trying to get some more information on. I mean, it's I guess it's something that just kind of went into that. If you read that book, there's a couple of others, they talk about it. But so, for instance, when I started college back in like 99, and there were the WTO protests up in Seattle. There were a few things which I think could be loosely related to what you see Antifa doing now. Just kind of protesting New World Order type stuff, and globalism, things like that. But there wasn't this call on college campus for safe spaces. There was still a very good atmosphere for an exchange of ideas and opinions, but it's something that I don't feel confident enough to go into like a lot of great detail on. But
well, it seems almost like at some point colleges became more of an experience than an education.
It did. So I forget, did you join the Army like just out of high school?
I actually joined the Guards while I was still in high school.
Okay.
So you can join when you're 17. So I did. I joined and I went to basic after I graduated.
So when did you take college classes? Did you were you
Right
on a
after I
college
graduated,
campus?
yeah, right after I graduated, I went to an engineering school for 3 years, and I got
Okay.
my associate. So, engineering school in 1996 to 99 probably isn't the best snapshot of college life in America. It was me and a bunch of foreign students taking math classes.
So there's not a lot of bias in that. At least there wasn't. But I have heard
No.
that math is the language of the patriarchy now, and that it's inherently racist according to some
Well, it was
studies.
almost all men. I mean, if it's racist towards Indians and Chinese, I would say that you might go that way because that's what almost all the classes were.
I
But
took I took a couple of electrical engineering classes when I was in college too. I was a bit of you remember the movie Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore?
yeah,
Yeah, that was essentially my experience. I majored in almost everything for at
same
least one
hair.
semester. But so like I said, I took a couple journalism classes. I did poli sci. I did a whole bunch of those other classes on campus, and there was still just a very open environment for discussions. But it is something that I've had some very good conversations with my father-in-law, who's been a college professor for what close to 25, maybe 30 years,
Huh?
maybe longer. And he teaches here in the metro, and he's talked about that there's been a definite change, especially over the last decade, as far as work ethic, as far as what people find offensive, what they're willing to do, just their openness to ideas. It has been a very big change even on the private campuses. And so it's like you've got people that are just taking out student loans, going to these things just almost for the experience, just to find some place where they can have like-minded discussions and not be challenged at all. That's actually one thing that's discussed in the book, is that there's this idea of fragility
Mm-hmm.
amongst a lot of the college students now, and that kind of, I guess, plays over into the media, is where the old idea of what doesn't kill us makes us stronger is now changed into what doesn't kill us just makes us weaker. And so that's kind of what you're working on with these modern thoughts here. And it does kind of play into what we see on the media nowadays, because that's what this generation wants, and that's where the new
Well,
money's
that's
starting
what
to go.
there's obviously people that want to be pandered to by Fox News. So I guess to come
It's true.
all the way around to Jared asking what did he ask? Do they need to pander to sell news? Yeah, I think so. And when did Fox News start? When did Fox News start? That was late 90s.
96.
So maybe that ties into the start of pander culture, maybe the whole pander thing kind of stems from Fox News. What do you think about that?
I think that might actually be a good idea,
The start of
because
parody. Yeah.
it really did. I mean, because you look at like the early to mid 90s, where you were turning into CNN for everything. So we were just getting their side on the O.J. Simpson, on Waco, on the 93 World Trade Center bombing, all of these things. And then Fox News came along, and I remember being excited actually by Fox News, I think, for that first year, because I was like, oh, here's a vastly different approach to the news stories that I'm hearing. And it was exciting. So you actually had some good competition there. And yeah, Jared actually brings up another good point. CNN in the first Gulf War. I mean, how much more, I think that was probably the first instance of modern
they had
propaganda.
Round the clock coverage of that thing, didn't they? If I remember right.
Yep, I remember sitting there with my parents watching the tanks, roll across the border, and then remember just watching footage of like the Scud missiles and everything going across the sky. So yeah, that was the first war that you could watch from beginning to end on TV.
Well, back to my pander culture comment. So Fox News comes along, and all the the conservative leaning people are going to go watch Fox News. So at that point, did CNN just say, all right, well, screw it. They got those guys. So let's start pandering to these leftists over here. And that's how they went that direction.
It definitely seems like that. I think CNN still tried to keep some modicum of neutrality. And that just went by the wayside completely once Bush.
Yeah, I
was
guess
in
they are
office.
still a little bit in the middle. I mean, I guess to take that all the way, MSNBC is the leftist progressive news, isn't it?
It is. It always has been. It's never been
And
shy about that.
they popped up shortly after Fox News, right?
I'm actually taking a look at that. It looks like MSN was in '96. Yeah.
Okay. So that might be the start of the pander and parody culture there. And that even our politics is all pandering now too. Pander to your crowd that's going to vote for you in the primary, and there you go.
Yeah, and that's been the one thing that has been a little different about Trump is that he did pander a lot, but he's actually trying to follow through with a few of the things that he said during his campaign, which is unusual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, remember Obama tried to say that he was going to close Gitmo and get us out of all the wars.
Promises. Yeah,
he made some amazing promises. Yeah, but no, I think the pandering definitely came into full force there once Fox and MSN came onto the scene, and then we really didn't have anything else to save us from it for, I don't know, a good almost 12 years until people started listening to the podcasts. And then I think really what kind of broke us out of that was Joe Rogan. Some people might say Alex Jones, but I don't. Was there ever a time when Alex Jones was actually viewed as a respectable broadcaster?
When he was Bill Hicks, I think. No, I don't. He's been around for a while, and I didn't really even know much about him until recently. He had like a late night TV show in Austin or something, and
yeah, I was looking. He's actually not that much older than you and I, but if he doesn't look like time's been good to him.
It's all that super male vitality. I don't know if he was considered. It seems like he got nuttier. Like he found, going back to the pander thing, seemed like he got nuttier once he found his target audience. And he would get those weird call-ins like it's Joe from the CIA and stuff like that, and turning the friggin' frogs gay. And
well, what's interesting though is every so often Alex Jones would actually get a story. Right. He would get something right because he'd be one of the only ones talking about that. And so, yeah, you kind of had this alternate media rise up in the mid 2000s, I'd say, once technology like what we're doing here became a bit more available.
Well, the great thing about Joe Rogan, though, is that he's free from the leftist lynch mob, that hits a lot of other. Well, he can say whatever he wants over on his show, and it seems like his advertisers don't seem to care.
I guess that's true. One of my favorite episodes of his this last year was, did you watch the whole Elon Musk interview?
Yeah.
So that's one thing, that's great about this new form of media is that you can get people like Elon Musk on there and just have a nice long form conversation and get good news. And then, maybe get somebody like that to smoke a blunt on TV.
He's kind of the only guy doing long form. I mean, are there other people doing long form interviews like that? Maybe I just don't know about them.
Well, there are others that will do that a bit. Like I said, Dave Smith with Part of the Problem, he will occasionally have somebody on his show and do a long form. He did one with Larry Sharp. Glenn Beck's also been doing long form podcasts on the weekend, which has had some pretty interesting guest hosts. One, I think, as a someone who likes World War I and World War II history like yourself, one I think you might like was he talked to somebody who's been traveling the country and talking with as many surviving World War II vets as possible to try and document their story, and just basically putting it all on one website. So I'll share that one with you a little bit later. But yeah, the long form, you don't get that on CNN, you don't get that on Fox or MSN. I mean, a lot of those networks, all you get now on those networks are 4 or 5 people all saying the same opinion. And when you get somebody who doesn't say the opinion that's approved by that network, they pretty much get yelled at and, shut down. And I don't know who is watching CNN to get well-informed, news. You're just not getting that from that network. You're really not going to get it from Fox. They occasionally will throw out a couple of nuggets there, but you're not getting anything from any of these stations. And I just highly urge anyone who's looking to get a good dose of, national news, start going to the podcasts, start going to, it's sad, but go to BBC, go to Al Jazeera.
Yeah. Well, I guess you bring up a point too with like Joe Rogan and new media. What's the role of the news with the social media out there when I can unfortunately I can find out exactly what Trump's thinking. I don't if you just follow his Twitter, I don't have to wait and see what the newspaper said when they interviewed Trump and just open up his Twitter, bam, there's what Trump's thinking about. And what, like even when I do stuff, I don't really like to talk to the news because I make myself so available on city council. They can just I have my email, my phone, Facebook, just come to me and get the story. You don't need to go to the newspaper and find out what they're saying. So what would even be the role of the news in this era of, instant accessibility?
See, and I don't even know anymore. I'd like to say it's where some people are going to get their opinions that they can post on Facebook. But honestly, if there's a breaking story, if you go to Twitter, you're going to see photos, videos, updates from people that are in that area. Like if there's an earthquake, anything, you're going to know by people in that area first before the major networks are covering it. For the in-depth analysis, you really need to listen to the Libertarian Institute, Scott Horton's podcast, because he gets into a lot of the foreign policies and, our current situation with the military and a whole host of countries. He's, really focuses on Syria, Iraq, Iran, but I just don't see how CNN, MSN, Fox are going to survive over the next decade. It's just this new media, this platform where everybody's got their ability to get their story out there. It's, I guess Jared does have one good comment there. It says mainstream media's role is to make 4chan hoaxes truth speak. Okay. Ben, real quick, this reminds me. Did you ever watch the show Aqua Teen Hunger Force?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you remember when the movie came out?
No.
Okay. When the movie came out, there was like this guerrilla advertisements for the movie.
Oh, with the Moonanites?
With the Moonanites. They put the Moonanites. They made the character of the Moonanites in the little light brights with them just giving the middle finger. And they hit them around various places in Boston. Well, the news didn't know what it was. And so it became like this big bomb scare hoax in the Boston area because they thought all of these devices could potentially be explosives. And so the news was reporting on all of these, potential explosives with this menacing looking character on there, had no idea what a Moonanite was. And so, that's one of the early forms of the hoaxes. That wasn't 4chan. That was just an Adult Swim cartoon that I thought got some great press out of the deal. But mainstream media, their job is really just to jump on something and get out all the wrong information as soon as possible. They don't care about being right. They just care about being first.
And back to the politicians and media. Do you follow? I'm not say her last name. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez at all on social media?
I don't have to. Enough people I know do.
I mean, she covers everything about her day, what's going on in Congress, what she's voting on. A lot of people are like, "Oh, she's so dumb." She's not. She's not dumb at all. She's acting dumb on purpose for a lot of those interviews, but she's setting a really good example of probably what politicians should do going forward. I mean, you can know exactly what your congressman's up to if they take 2 or 3 minutes after a vote to say something or what's going on, and they can even reach out to him there. If you're not, are you on Instagram at all?
I am.
It's just, I would follow her on Instagram just because it's interesting, because she goes over all the inner workings of Congress that you probably won't get out of anybody else. And she posts constantly throughout the day. It's just kind of neat to see the curtain pulled aside, so to say, that I've never noticed any other Congress people doing. I think that's kind of the way of the future, and people probably come to expect that once you become a politician, you're basically going to be like a public figure / mini celebrity at that point.
Well, you're kind of feeling that now, aren't you?
No, not not city council. Somebody would. I mean, if they, I actually would post quick live segments after council talking about what went on if I thought people would actually listen to it. But at that level, 90% of the people don't even give a crap about anything. Congressional Dish. Jared just put, is that like a website talking about congressional gossip? But I think how long have we been talking for? This is a pretty good conversation.
Yeah, about 35 minutes or so.
So I think we covered most of the stuff I wanted to cover. We steered into politicians. We never did have a good answer why citizens should get their information about the politician from the news as opposed to just the politician.
Well, I think if you're looking at the local news, that's going to be a great source for your local politicians. And, even across the state, love him or hate him, at least I think Ben Sasse has been open about, his ideas with a lot of the local news stations and has been pretty available. You look at your state legislature, my state legislator, Senator Blood, I follow her on social media, and she's always posting about not only the stuff that's coming up and with the bills, but just stuff that's kind of coming up in the area. So she's at least, very open about.
So at the state level, I mean, that's probably coming. I've noticed a couple doing that. I think that's coming to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
I know Laura Ebke used to do that all the time on hers, and Adam Morfeld. I mean, he's very active on social media, so I think that's coming to be expected more and more. I don't know if it'll ever work its way down to the local level, though. Maybe.
Well, it might, but then again, you're kind of getting into this. Well, if they're posting stuff on social media, if they're using Twitter to be responsive to other individuals, you and me both there, Jared, by the way, it's why do you need a lot of the media on this? And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to be something that the major media outlets aren't going to be television networks. They're going to be places like what The Blaze has built. They're going to be, some of these other podcast sites. That's going to be where you're going to get a lot of your information. And if you want to know nationally or international still, see what's trending on Reuters. Check out BBC and Al Jazeera, some of the other international news sites, because you're never going to get from here on out. I don't think you're ever going to get a fair shake or a good analysis of policy from the three main networks.
Well, and just a shout out to KNEB, which you mentioned earlier. And, I don't know if they were just ahead of their time or stumbled upon it on accident, but, they're a radio station, but they have a very active website. They update it all the time, active on Facebook, and they also do video news also. So
Hmm.
I think, if you're going to be in this, you got to cover everything anymore. You can't just be a newspaper. You got to have an active Facebook, active website, everything.
Yeah, actually, that's true. KETV, our ABC affiliate here in Omaha, has actually
Mhm.
been really good about that too. They all of their on-air personalities, they will report things on their own social media and feed stuff through Twitter. They're usually pretty responsive with other
Mhm.
stories too. So I gotta say, I really like them. I'll go to their site and WOWT just for a lot of the updates. I'll
Yeah,
always bypass the
a
journal.
lot of these, yeah, the flexible ones seems like they're going to stick it out. I honestly can't wait for the World Herald to close up because it seems like they're kind of behind the times on what they're doing.
Well, they went through big downsizing earlier this year. I mean, they got new ownership, and then a lot of people over the last year ended up getting let go from the paper, and it was because of, I think they said they wanted to try and take it in a little bit of a different direction, but I mean, their revenue was down tremendously, and I'm not surprised. And like I said, I know Aaron and a couple other people that are there are good folks, but yeah, I will not weep for the World Herald when that.
Well, and Shambaugh here says always people always get news because they're lazy, but new media, I mean, you can be really lazy. You got a pop up notification on your phone that so and so said something. You just got to move your finger a couple inches. So I don't think you can get any lazier than that. You're pretty much getting spoon fed your information.
Well, so do this. Go to
Mhm.
CNN at any time of the day, and on the website, not on your phone, so that way you can get the full screen, and then just see how many of the top 20 stories are about Trump, and how many of them are about Trump saying one thing but from a slightly different angle. It is completely ridiculous. I went there earlier today, and so much of it was just about what Trump said or how Trump looked at the funeral for George Bush. They just kept, they're like, well, here's what W and Michelle Obama did, but here's where Trump, just it was just this such anti-Trump news, and it wasn't actually telling me anything. So that is, I don't know. That's just a site that I is just a parody of itself now.
Yeah. Well, and what are you gonna? I'm assuming that they can't keep that up. That goes back to the whole thing. So I guess the short answer to our journalism and democracy, where is it going? Is it going? It's going to social media. Is that what our long form short?
It's gonna go social media. It's gonna go podcasting. Yeah, it's all gonna be media that you can choose to consume, um, and it's all gonna be stuff that's not scripted.
Yeah, that's the ultimate pandering when you can just pick when you can pick what you want to hear about, isn't it?
But also you can
You're pandering
pick.
to yourself.
Well, you can, but it's kind of interesting sometimes to go to a podcast that's unlike what you would listen to, like Pod Save America or some of these other far left podcasts, or
Mhm.
you can really get in depth as to why an individual has a completely different idea than you do, and it might actually improve dialogue if you're talking with somebody about a particular issue. um, and I bring up this example sometimes, it's that kind of ties into this, is that when I want to talk to somebody about abortion, I've actually been a part of this group that's an atheist pro-life group,
Mhm.
which allows me to see different points of view on how to talk about something that I have a very strong opinion on, but not from the type of background that I came from. So it's, you can pick and choose other forms of media. You can pick and choose other podcasts that are going to be a great source of information. But yeah, CNN, MSN, Fox, they're going to die, I think, once generation
all the baby boomers.
I don't want to didn't want to say it, but yeah, I think once the boomer generation starts to depart this planet, and Gen X is kind of taken over on that that demographic, you'll definitely see those networks going away.
Well, I think it was a great conversation. We're going to keep the weekly thing going too, right? Are you up next, or am I up next?
I believe Thursdays are going to be me. So yeah, another family road trip coming up. But yeah, everybody keep listening to Roads to Liberty. We're going to get a new website up soon. Also go to our Facebook page. We still got it tagged to get a Roads to Liberty t-shirt. And yeah, keep checking throughout the week. Ben, myself, Hobbs is going to jump on at some point and do his solo, and Nathan, I think, is reading a couple more World War I history books, so he's going to probably get on and give us like a 4-hour dissertation on whatever book he just read.
So, all right, great.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. You have a good night.
Thanks. See ya.